Welcome to NTD Good Morning.
Here are today's top stories. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says the Fed has been hit with Justice Department grand jury subpoenas. Powell accuses the government of going after the agency over interest rates.
President Trump says the Iranian regime is seeking negotiations after he warned of possible military action. What Trump is saying as unrest escalates in the Islamic Republic.
Federal agents surge into Minnesota as ICE ramps up operations. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says hundreds more agents are arriving after a fatal shooting involving an ICE officer sparks protests, and President Trump weighs in.
Lawmakers are working to find a deal on lowering health care costs. President Trump justifying an end to the enhanced tax subsidies that help pay for Obamacare.
The 83rd Annual Golden Globes Award took place over the weekend. We take a look at the awards some of your favorite TV shows and movies won.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Stephanie Cox and Carrie Dunst.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Today is Monday, January 12th. You're watching NTD Good Morning. In today's top news, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says the central bank has been served with grand jury subpoenas by the Department of Justice.
Powell confirmed yesterday that officials threatened a criminal indictment over his Senate Banking Committee testimony back in June of 2025. The testimony concerned in part a multi-year project to renovate historic Federal Reserve office buildings.
The central bank chief dismissed the idea that this criminal probe was driven by his testimony or the renovation. Powell called the threat of criminal charges a consequence of the Federal Reserve's handling of interest rates. His remarks came hours after reports surfaced that federal prosecutors opened an inquiry into Powell. And anti-government protests are escalating in Iran and have now entered their third week.
Yes, President Trump is warning the U.S. could take military action in response to the regime's treatment of protesters. Here's that story.
President Trump says Iran's leadership is seeking negotiations after he warned of possible military action, speaking on Air Force One.
Yesterday, the leaders of Iran called they want to negotiate. I think they're tired of being beat up by the United States.
As massive protests rock the country, President Trump says he is weighing a range of responses to escalating unrest, including possible military options.
There seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent. If you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military is looking at it. And we're looking at some very strong options.
The Iranian parliament speaker on Sunday warned the U.S. against what he called a miscalculation.
Know that in case of an attack on Iran, the occupied lands, as well as U.S. military bases in the region, will be our legitimate targets.
Trump responded to Iran's threat of retaliation.
If they do that, we will hit them at levels that they've never been hit before. And they won't even believe it.
Trump also said yesterday that he plans to speak with Elon Musk about restoring internet in Iran. Authorities have blacked out services since Thursday.
Well, we're going to be talking about that. We may get the internet going, if that's possible. We may speak to Elon, because as you know, he's very good at that kind of thing. He's got a very good company.
Iran's current protests began on December 28th in response to soaring prices before turning against the Islamic regime that has governed since the 1979 revolution. A human rights group said yesterday the ongoing unrest has killed more than 500 people. The U.S.-based group Human Rights Activists in Iran said it had verified the deaths of 490 protesters and 48 security personnel. It also said more than 10,000 people have been arrested in the 2 weeks of unrest. Meanwhile, Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of Iran's last Shah, has called on Iranians to continue their protests. And in Los Angeles, chaos yesterday during a protest against the Iranian regime. Police say a man drove a U-Haul through a crowd of protesters. A sign on the side of the truck said, "No Shah, no regime, USA don't repeat 1953, a reference to the 1953 coup instigated by the U.S. government and the Shah. 2 people suffered minor injuries. Protesters surrounded the truck and began smashing the vehicle's windows. Police said they detained the driver pending further investigation. They did not publicly identify him. It's unclear whether the event was an intentional attack.
And joining us now to discuss the protests in Iran is geopolitical analyst Brandon Weichert. He's the senior national security editor at the National Interest. Brandon, you are, of course, the oracle who predicted Operation Midnight Hammer on this very show when no one else saw it coming. So no pressure, Brandon. But in all seriousness, we're having another Trump moment, right? His next move is hard to predict. People didn't expect him to go into Venezuela in the way that he did. What do you expect here?
Well, I thought he was going into Venezuela the way he did. I had that one, too, under my belt. But ultimately, this issue in Iran is very unique. It's different from the 12-day war. It's different from what we did in June of last year, because back then we didn't really have protests seeking clearly to change the regime. The real question I think that many people are asking, at least those people who are not taking sides, is, how large are these protests really? They look large, they sound fierce, but we've been through this before in Iran many times where large protests happen, but they don't overthrow the government. Trump might want to now nudge the regime off the edge of the cliff. And I would just warn everybody, though, that the Iranian regime might have sort of that old dead hand program that the Soviets used to have, which is basically, if it looks like the regime is going to fall, if it looks like all is lost, they might just start popping off hypersonic missiles and nukes because they probably have nukes. They might start popping those off at Israel and the whole region, which is probably one reason why those Russian diplomats are fleeing Israel with such wanton abandon.
That's a very interesting data point that the Russian officials are leaving Israel. I want to understand the regime's ability to jam Starlink. Obviously, they've taken down their own internet for the public use. But even I've read reports that Elon Musk's satellite-provided internet is also something that they have the capability to take out.
Yeah, so this is not an Iranian capability. This is a Russian and Chinese capability, and they're using Iran as a test vehicle. Just as we used the Venezuela raid to test those really wild sonic weapons against Maduro's Cuban intelligence bodyguards, the Chinese and Russians have offloaded anti-satellite technology designed specifically to knock out Starlink to their allies in Iran, who are, of course, using it. And this is not the first time the Iranians have jammed Western satellites. I documented this in my book, The Shadow War, Iran's Quest for Supremacy. Basically, the Iranians routinely test blocking out their country from Western satellites because they know those satellites are used to beam in anti-regime propaganda.
Yeah, as you point out, this seems like a completely another level compared to what Maduro had in terms of sophistication and preparation.
Absolutely.
You mentioned the sonic weapon that was used when they extracted Maduro. The post that Caroline Levitt shared that described a Venezuelan security apparatus for Maduro being overcome by that weapon was somewhat chilling. Could you describe that? And is that one of Trump's options should he choose action?
I don't think he's going to use any kind of special forces or ground forces. He might if it looks like the regime's really going to collapse and there's a window of opportunity. But landing even special forces is going to be a little bit more complicated in Iran than it was in, say, Venezuela. I think he might do aerial attack like we saw in June. We already see those B-2s being repositioned to Diego Garcia. If you've monitored the pattern of deployment of U.S. forces into the Middle East for the last week or so, it's almost identical to the pattern of deployment that preceded the 12-day war strikes, the strikes on those nuclear facilities. So Trump might very well be getting ready to initiate another series of airstrikes. They might be more comprehensive. Also be watching for the Israelis. Interestingly, the Israelis have not used this as I thought they would. They're not using this to initiate strikes the way they struck Iran in the 12-day war. But more interestingly, I mean, we know Mossad's on the ground all over the place, and I suspect probably our own CIA helping to gin up these protests and give them greater discipline probably. This is clearly a regime change operation by another name.
Can you explore further your comment of some of the, if all else fails, options that the regime has and how the U.S. might counter that in anything that they might do?
Well, I think another reason the U.S. is moving all of these assets into the region is to boost the kind of missile defense capabilities. The Iranians, I am convinced, along with the Houthis, are likely to initiate sort of the mother of all swarm attacks against Israel with their hypersonic weapons, their long-range ballistic missiles, and their drones. And, you know, the Iranians probably have a latent nuclear capability. Last week, there was a sort of implied threat from the Iranian president that they would be going nuclear in 24 hours, and then that sort of fizzled away. I suspect they probably have surge capacity, and they are probably preparing to launch, if all else fails, they are probably to launch not only the mother of all swarms at Israel and the American bases in the region, but they might be preparing to detonate some nukes. And we can't discount the fact that the Iranians have placed electromagnetic pulse weapons in the orbit around the Earth. These are the Ovid satellites they've been placing up there since 2012, 2013. And the EMP strike is a Sharia-approved nuclear attack without the kind of death of a nuclear attack. It basically knocks out all advanced electronics. So this is sort of the things to watch out for when we talk about an Iranian Samson option, if you will.
And just as we finish up, Brandon, taking out their air defenses does not defend against any of those capabilities you had described.
Not at all.
So how do you approach such a fragile situation like this if you're Trump?
Well, I suspect another reason Trump is moving the air assets in is to be able to strike those known facilities where they're housing these missiles and drones, knock out the drone facilities. This might be a more comprehensive strike if Trump feels the regime's going to fall, and in response, the regime is going to do a kind of final, flipping of the bird, if you will, to the region. And I think that's another reason you're seeing these bombers being deployed. It's our own fail-safe. So that's something we can do. And then obviously the air defense systems, though, that we are putting in place throughout the region will help to mitigate some of the threat, but it won't stop at all. The Israelis know that, and I think that's why the Israelis are also panicking. That's why Netanyahu went to Mar-a-Lago recently and was begging for more air defense capabilities. And of course, the American arsenal is depleting in and of itself. So this will be a very tough time, but I suspect that regime is on its way out, and that's when things are going to get really nasty.
Brandon, just as we finish up, are we talking hours, days, or weeks in terms of the final escalation that you predict?
It's going to be weeks, days or weeks. I wish I could give you more exact like I did in last summer, but it's coming. It's coming. I think this is the end of the regime. The question is what replaces it, and I'm not convinced that the Shah's grandson is at all the right pick, or the MEK. That strike in the rally in Los Angeles that you showed with the U-Haul, I think that might have been MEK, which is another rival dissident group that doesn't want to see the Shah take over a post-Islamist Iran. So there's a lot of problems that are going to open up the moment the regime in Iran falls. I don't want the United States in the middle of that.
On the brink of history, Brandon Weichert, always appreciate your analysis in these moments.
Thank you, Sarah.
Days or weeks. The oracle has spoken.
Yes, he has. He has spoken, indeed.
All right, next
Chilling.
up. President Trump's motorcade was rerouted yesterday after a suspicious object was found at Palm Beach International Airport in Florida.
That's according to the White House, which said the Secret Service found the object during a sweep before the president's arrival.
Details about the object and its origin were not immediately available. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said further investigation was warranted and said the presidential motorcade route was adjusted accordingly.
The Secret Service said the route change was taken as a precaution, calling it standard protocol. Despite the incident, the president was able to board Air Force One, and he continued with his travel plans as normal. And he later told the reporters that he had no information about the object.
And now a look at Minnesota and the ICE operations there to apprehend criminal illegal immigrants. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says hundreds more agents are on the way.
NTD's Daniel Monahan has more as the tensions have heated up after an ICE officer, of course, was involved in the fatal shooting last week.
DHS recently sent 2,000 federal immigration agents to Minneapolis, and hundreds were set to arrive yesterday and today amid widespread fraud allegations. Protests erupted after a January 7th incident in which an ICE officer fatally shot a protester as she hit him with her car in an apparent attempt to flee. Minnesota officials are calling for state authorities to be included in the shooting investigation. President Trump reacted to the incident aboard Air Force One.
These people have been harassed and threatened every day. They had bands out playing so they couldn't sleep at the hotel. I see what they're doing to them. They're threatening them constantly. And all they're doing is doing what I got elected on.
Trump said he believes the woman and her friend behaved like professional agitators.
The woman and her friend were highly disrespectful of law enforcement. You saw that. They were harassing them, were following for days and for hours.
Trump said people have to respect law enforcement.
At a very minimum, that woman was very, very disrespectful to law enforcement. And you heard the same noises. You saw the same crunch that I saw. You can't do that with law enforcement, whether it's police or ICE or Border Patrol or anybody else.
Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem defended the officer.
Law enforcement officers every day in this country are in difficult situations where they have to make split-second decisions to protect themselves, the public, and their colleagues, and that they have to rely on their training. That's exactly what this officer did.
Noem questioned the fairness of media coverage of the incident.
I haven't heard you say once what a disservice it's done for Mayor Frey to get up and to tell ICE to get the F out of his city, and AOC to stand up before she had any of the facts and call this officer a murderer. For individuals, well, call them out, Jake. Spend as much time calling them out.
Noem says ICE is making the streets safer.
These sanctuary cities, such as Minneapolis, are extremely dangerous for American citizens. And Jake, since we've been there, we've arrested dozens and dozens of murderers and rapists, individuals who have assaulted children and sodomized them.
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey pushed back, saying there have been 2 shootings so far this year in the city, and one involved ICE.
This is a safe city. ICE and Kristi Noem and everything they're doing is making it far less safe.
Police Department Chief Brian O'Hara says he'll be the first to stand up for cops he supervises if he believes they acted within the law.
We have to use caution, even as Tom Homan has said, and allow a full and impartial investigation to proceed.
Border Czar Tom Homan said he believes the officer thought his life was in danger, speaking on Fox News.
Let's stop the hateful rhetoric. You can't compare this to murder. Murder requires malice, and that is just dangerous to put that type of language out. Let the investigation play out and see where it lies.
Homan says it's important to remember why ICE is in the city to begin with.
Because you're a sanctuary city that purposely releases public safety threats back into the public. I just mentioned about all these cases that child sex trafficking, child sodomy, child rape, that they release back into the community. These are people we have to go look for. And who set the stage for all this? The last 4 years of an open border, millions of people released in this country without vetting, a lot of criminals, a lot of national security threats.
Tens of thousands of people took to the streets of Minneapolis yesterday and Saturday to protest the shooting of Renee Nicole Good. Conflicts between protesters and ICE officers took place outside a federal building that the agency is using as a detention facility.
The clashes also embroiled conservative influencer Nick Sorder, who sped off from the scene with fellow influencer Cam Higbee after conflicts with protesters culminated in his vehicle being surrounded. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Thanks to Daniel for that report. And authorities say a suspect has been arrested in connection with an arson fire at a Jackson, Mississippi synagogue. Investigators say the fire broke out early Saturday morning at the historic Beth Israel congregation. Jackson Mayor John Moran said yesterday the arrest followed a joint investigation by local and federal law enforcement. Authorities have not released the suspect's name or announced the charges. The mayor says the alleged arson is being treated as a serious act of terror against the community. Officials say the investigation is ongoing as authorities work to determine a motive. Still to come, President Trump is warning credit card companies they would be in violation of the law if they don't meet a January 20th deadline to cap interest rates.
That's right. Trump has set a 10% cap while card companies are pushing back.
Meanwhile, lawmakers are working to find a deal on lowering healthcare costs. President Trump justifying an end to the enhanced tax subsidies that help pay for the program after several House Republicans voted with Democrats on an extension. Those stories and more up ahead.
Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puritane black ginseng, crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. Each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption.
Welcome back. President Trump says relations with Venezuela's leadership are working out well.
That's right. He was speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One yesterday, and he was saying that he plans to meet with Venezuela's interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, very soon.
Venezuela is really working out well. We're working along really well with the leadership, and we'll see how it all works out. Look, she asked us, can we take 50 million barrels of oil? And I said, yes, we can. It's $4.2 billion. And it's on its way right now to the United States.
Trump added that he might block ExxonMobil from investing in Venezuela. This comes after the oil giant's CEO called the country uninvestable during a White House meeting last week.
CEO Darren Woods told Trump that Venezuela would need to change its laws before it could be an attractive investment opportunity. Trump said yesterday he didn't like Exxon's response, telling reporters he'd probably be inclined to keep them out now.
And the U.S. Embassy in Venezuela says the security situation in the country remains fluid. It warned U.S. citizens this weekend not to travel to Venezuela, reiterating warnings dating back to 2019.
Yeah, it said international flights have resumed and all U.S. citizens should leave the country immediately. The embassy said they could take precautions and be aware of their surroundings, citing reports of armed militias which are setting up roadblocks, and they're searching vehicles for evidence of U.S. citizenship or support of the U.S.
And how did Venezuela go from being a once prosperous country to an authoritarian hub for drug cartels and also a key base of Chinese and Iranian influence? And how does Maduro's capture affect Beijing's strategy on Latin America?
To unwrap these questions, American thought leaders host Jan Jekielek sat down with Michael Waller. Waller's a senior analyst for the strategy at the Center for Security Policy. He's also author of the book Big Intel. Let's have a look at that.
Michael Waller, such a pleasure to have you on American Thought Leaders.
It's good to see you.
Let's talk about Venezuelan leader Maduro being captured by the United States. What are the geopolitical implications here? What's going on?
There are potentially huge geopolitical implications because now no leader on earth is safe from the United States. If we have the capability to undetected come into a huge fortified military base and break into the inner sanctum of where a leader is hiding and snatch him out undetected, then the whole world has changed.
What are the implications with respect to communist China? I've seen quite a bit of commentary on this issue. Notably, there was actually a delegation from China there, hours before the raid that took Maduro actually took place. What do you think?
Well, it was interesting because just a couple days before Trump removed Maduro, the Chinese regime had said, we're not going to give up an inch of our gains in Latin America. So Trump just went and took away a lot of those gains. Venezuela was an important linchpin for the CCP and for its global strategy in building a blue water navy that will ultimately be able to operate in any part of the world. It will become a trans-Pacific power on the sea. It will become an Atlantic maritime power. The PLA Navy would become under this plan a Caribbean power, which means control over Panama Canal, which means control over shipping from Houston, Galveston, Mississippi River Delta, anywhere in the world. So it would use its Belt and Road dual-use port facilities, both seaport and airport facilities, to expand its power projection, and then to potentially not potentially, but this is the whole theory behind it, to allow any Chinese warships existing now or those that are being built now to dock at these Belt and Road facilities anywhere in the world. So Venezuela was a colossal asset for China as a piece of real estate from which the CCP could operate against us, but also a huge resource sitting on the world's largest reserves of oil. Once that infrastructure was restored, Venezuela could provide the Chinese communists with any amount of oil, and for them it's embargoed oil, right? It's under sanctions, so the Venezuelans can't sell it on the open market for dollars. They have to sell it at a steep discount, and the Chinese communists don't even have to pay in petrodollars. They're paying in yuan, or they're paying in barter. So this is super cheap oil that's keeping Xi Jinping's whole domestic and global agenda afloat, and they've just lost it.
There's this other dimension I heard about. There was commentary about how it was Chinese radar systems that had been basically evaded by the American force. Have you actually followed the dynamics of the raid and what we actually know as a fact? And how did this fit in?
Oh, this is a big defeat for the CCP's military hardware industry and for the Huawei telecommunications industry, because Venezuela is wired with Huawei. So Beijing is so smug about controlling the world through Huawei. Well, it looks like the United States was able to break in through cyber attacks into the whole Huawei system and shut it down. And also to break in to the logic systems of the computers running the Chinese-made air defense systems and to shut those down.
Fascinating. So it wasn't that the systems weren't working, it was that they were disabled.
They were disabled.
So what is going to happen to Xi Jinping and his agenda?
So you have these oil billionaires who are also CCP officials. You have provincial officials that depend on the oil refining industry, who also have a lot of power within the CCP and Xi Jinping's base within the party. All right now, while Xi is purging the military yet again, so he's feeling unstable. So can you imagine how he has to seem invincible? He has to seem flawless. His whole domestic image is one of flawless perfection, and he's making China a superpower and an extremely modern, economically powerful future of the world. Well, what's happening now? That whole thing risks collapse. The CCP is super leveraged out. It cannot afford to lose anything economically right now.
Well, and you also said at the beginning that basically this is a message that the U.S., if you keep up bad behavior, if I recall the something, I believe it was Secretary Rubio said, he said, we gave him lots of chances, right? And so, and I'm not 100% sure what exactly the chances were, other than kind of stand down around the cartel activity and so forth. That anyone is fair game. Is when you say anyone, does that include some of the great powers?
Well, just think of what was done. They were using the best air defense systems that the Russians and the Chinese regime could produce, and they're complete failures. What does this say to everybody else in the world who wants to integrate themselves with Russian and Chinese military systems? It's like, you're selling us junk. You're not making us safer at all. You're a terrible ally. And then both Russia and the Chinese government are completely helpless to do anything to help Maduro. If you're a strongman somewhere, you're a dictator, you're somebody who's just on the take from the CCP, the party can't defend you. So this is going to cause, potentially, especially if Trump plays it right and keeps pushing, it's going to cause a complete change around the world in regimes that want to ally themselves with the Chinese Communist Party.
And to watch the full episode, you can go to epochtv.com and look for American thought leaders. Next up, President Trump is warning credit card companies that they will be in violation of the law if they fail to comply with his deadline for capping interest rates.
Of course, credit card companies go up to like 25%, so you can see why they're pushing back. And the president has given them until the 20th of this month, and they have to cap their interest rates at 10%.
No, I want a cap on credit card interest rates because, some of them are 28, almost 30%. And that the people don't know they're paying 30%. The people out there, they're working and they have no idea that they're paying 30%. No way. We're putting a 1-year cap at 10%, and that's it. They know it. They've really abused the public. The credit card companies have totally abused it. I'm not going to let it happen.
For now, Trump's demand has no legislation to back it up. However, lawmakers from both parties have raised concerns in recent years about high rates and have called for those to be addressed.
Several industry groups, including the Bank Policy Institute and Consumer Bankers Association, have responded to Trump's call. In a joint statement on Friday, they said they share the president's goal of helping Americans access more affordable credit, but they think a 10% interest rate cap would reduce credit availability for millions of families as well as small business owners.
As lawmakers are working to find a deal on lowering health care costs, President Trump justifies ending COVID-era tax credits to support Obamacare. His comments come after several Republicans broke ranks on the issue. NTD's Melina Weiskup has more.
The COVID-era tax subsidies that help pay for Obamacare expired at the beginning of the month. Senators on Capitol Hill now under pressure to find a path to address health care costs.
I am hopeful next week that the Senate will be able to put out a bill that is a compromise that addresses the extension with reforms, including income limits, insurance reforms, the elimination of zero premium plans.
Because it has to conform first with what President Trump says he wants, which, by the way, I totally agree with. And that is, don't give 100% of the money to the insurance companies who take 20% of it for profit and overhead. Give the money to the patient. And she will use.
President Trump on Sunday sought to justify an end to the enhanced Obamacare subsidies, sharing comments from the D.C. think tank Cato Institute, calling for Congress to stop talking about extending the taxpayer-funded subsidies. Instead, the think tank's health policy director calls to restore health insurance relief from Trump's first term. In the post copied by Trump, the director said, "It won't destabilize Obamacare, much simpler than what President Trump's advisors are selling him, much better to assuage the fears of nervous Democrats." The president's post comes after several House Republicans voted with Democrats to extend Obamacare subsidies for 3 years.
The People's House has just delivered a decisive victory for the American people by extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits to prevent tens of millions of Americans from experiencing dramatically increased health insurance premiums.
Though most Republicans oppose the extension, several of them told NTD it's a waste of tax dollars.
We were able to uncover through an investigation that the same Social Security number was used 125 times, the same one, to apply for these insurance premiums, and it was accepted 125 times. Wow. So we know that there is rampant waste, fraud, and abuse in that system.
Even with those tax credits in place, Obamacare premiums have skyrocketed. So they're not applying the tax credits, to keep prices under control.
In my view, I don't see the logic behind increasing subsidies on a known broken system, and that's what this is.
House Republicans are calling on top health insurance executives to testify later this month. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
And President Trump continues to assert that the U.S. needs to take control of Greenland.
The president yesterday repeated what he sees as the risk of Russia and China gaining the upper hand on the island.
If we don't take Greenland, Russia or China will take Greenland, and I am not going to let that happen.
Is there any deal they can offer you?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to make a deal with them. It's easier. But one way or the other, we're going to have Greenland. You know what their defense is? 2 dog sleds. In the meantime, you have Russian destroyers and submarines and China destroyers and submarines all over the place. We're not going to let that happen.
In the meantime, are you going to...
And if it affects NATO, then it affects NATO.
Trump said again that he would like to make a deal to acquire Greenland, a semi-autonomous region that's part of NATO ally Denmark. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has warned that an American takeover of Greenland would mark the end of NATO.
Greenland is the largest island in the world, with a population of only around 57,000 for such a large landmass, and it doesn't have its own military. It's unclear how the remaining NATO members would respond if the U.S. decided to forcibly take control of the island.
Coming up, nurses in New York City have begun their largest strike in the city's history.
Nearly 16,000 nurses have walked off the job as the union says talks have now stalled.
And the 83rd Annual Golden Globes Award took place over the weekend. We take a look at the awards some of your favorite TV shows and movies won after this.
Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. I'm Carrie Dunst. If you're just joining us now, here are some of today's top headlines. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says the Fed has been served with grand jury subpoenas by the Department of Justice. Powell confirms officials threatened criminal charges tied to his June 2025 Senate testimony. Powell denies the probe is connected to that testimony, saying the threat stems from the Fed's handling of interest rates. And federal immigration enforcement is ramping up in Minnesota. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says hundreds more agents are arriving after about 2,000 were sent to the Twin Cities. The surge follows a January 7th fatal shooting involving an ICE officer, sparking large protests. President Trump and federal officials are defending the officer, while Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey says the operation is making the city less safe. And President Trump says Iran's leadership has reached out to negotiate. That follows his warning that military options are on the table amid protests rocking the country. A top Iranian official says U.S. bases and Israel would be targeted if Iran is attacked. Trump also says he may work with Elon Musk to restore internet access after Tehran imposed blackouts. A rights group says the unrest has killed more than 500 people so far. Those are this morning's top headlines. With that, Steph, over to you.
Thank you, Carrie. And the largest nurses' strike in New York City's history begins today after talks collapsed. Union officials say nearly 16,000 nurses are walking off the job. The strike will affect some of the city's largest privately run hospitals, including Mount Sinai, Montefiore, Einstein, and New York Presbyterian. The New York State Nursing Association said yesterday contract talks with those hospital systems have stalled. The union is demanding an increase in wages, increased staffing, full health care coverage, workplace protections against violence, and safeguards on the use of AI in health care. Governor Kathy Hochul has declared a state of emergency, warning a strike could threaten patient safety. The union says it will hold a press conference at New York Presbyterian at 10 a.m.
Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. I'm Carrie Dunst, and it was a wild weekend of football for both the NFL and the college playoffs. Joining us now to discuss it all is Mike Leon. He's the host of the Can We Please Talk podcast. Mike, we've been threatening to do this for some time now. Here we are. Good morning. Happy Monday.
Good morning, Carrie. I know, exciting week of football playoffs, but the college football playoff kicked us off on Thursday and Friday, so.
Indeed, and we're normally talking politics, but like in Roman times, it's what's happening in the Colosseum that really captures the imagination of the public. And rather than have that philosophical conversation of if that's a good thing, let's just jump in and talk football. And as you guess, as you point out, I want to talk college football, but let's start with the NFL. We'll get that out of the way because people love the NFL. But it was really a crazy wild card NFL weekend. And, you know, there's still a sixth game tonight, Steelers-Texans. But with the exception of the New England defense sealing their win over the Chargers, really 4 of the 5 games were thrillers that came down to the last set of downs. The Bears are back after, 20 years. Josh Allen, he outlasts Trevor Lawrence. San Fran drops the reigning Eagles champs, and the Rams survive Carolina. So where do you want to go first, Mike?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could do the segment without me, Carrie. I mean, you know everything right there. I mean, I'll start first with the Bills. You know, I had in my prediction pool, I had the Bills winning on the road. I think they were the team with the most to lose. You know, this playoffs doesn't feature Lamar Jackson with the Ravens, Patrick Mahomes. Those two guys have been the bane of Josh Allen's existence throughout the NFL playoffs and his, 7-8 years in the NFL so far. So I think, they're going on the road. They're facing a team that won 13 games. They're home. They're the 3 seed. The Bills have some injuries. And so here's Josh Allen with no other competition that's at his level at the quarterback position, at least remaining in the playoffs, in my opinion, he's got to go out there and perform. And he went out there, game-winning drive. Buffalo hadn't won a road playoff game in, I forget, the last 8 times. I think they were 0-8 in their last 8 times. So they went out there and they performed well. They won the game. And, kudos to Josh Allen and Sean McDermott and the gang. Now they get a chance to go to the Broncos, another vulnerable team that I think that they should be able to beat. And the AFC door is kind of wide open. A lot of newbies in the AFC side. This is Josh Allen's playoffs to lose. He's got to get Buffalo to a Super Bowl. I think the monkey is on him for sure, Kerry.
Yeah, and what do you think about in the NFC? Clearly, I was shocked San Fran taking down the Eagles at home. The Bears are back. Maybe a Super Bowl shuffle? What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, the Bears have the Packers number, right? For people that are watching that game Saturday night. I apologize if you don't have Amazon Prime and you had to subscribe to Amazon Prime to watch the game. We can get into customer confusion in another segment, Kerry. But Packers-Bears, probably game of the weekend, in terms of just the Bears being down the entire game. The entire game, literally. It took a 4th and 8 miraculous throw from Caleb Williams to actually get them downfield and then obviously take the lead. But the Bears and drafting Caleb Williams a couple years ago, getting Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator from the Lions, now the head coach in his first year, winning a division title. The city is on fire. I have a lot of friends in Chicago. I used to work for a Chicago-based company, so I was there a lot in 23 and 24. I know the fans' pains over there, and now the joy that they have seeing the Bears, and that famous sketch on SNL and seeing them, rise to prominence. That was probably the game that caught my attention. Rams, I thought, played a little bit with their food in terms of taking on the Panthers. McVay, some questionable decisions there, not kicking the field goal early in the first half. That would have put them up 20-7, but they ended up winning that game. And then, like you said, the Niners, injury-riddled, going into Philadelphia. The Eagles and the storylines are going to be abundant in the offseason. Nick Sirianni arguing with his players on the sideline. I know you're a Penn State guy, Kerry. I don't know if you're an Eagles guy, but that wasn't very good to see. And I know, okay, that's good to hear. And then, the Seahawks are sitting by waiting, and they get the winners of these games. And so the NFC is an interesting one, but 3 NFC West teams that are going to be in the playoffs. If you're an Arizona Cardinals fan, which is the 4th team in that division, you're probably crying right now because you've got years of work ahead of you with these 3 teams in front of you.
All right, let's get to the important stuff, college. And, I know you're eager to get into Miami, but let's start with the Hoosiers, the coach, the Heisman winner. There's, the worst team out of the 133 Division I football teams in the history of the sport. 2-year turnaround by Curt Cignetti. I'd love to get your thoughts on that, as well as Fernando winning the Heisman and going back to Miami to play in front of his home crowd, though taking on, of course, the Miami Hurricanes.
Yeah, it's probably the best storyline and the best ending for the CFP, right? You got the Columbus High School graduate, 2-star recruit, not recruited by the University of Miami in Mendoza, coming back home to take on the University of Miami. The game just happens to be down here at Miami Gardens at the stadium. I mean, it's going to be rocking. Kerry, let me give you a stat that a lot of people don't know. In 2023, Rutgers football demolished Indiana, and then they beat the University of Miami in a bowl game at the Pinstripe Bowl in New York. Now, just 3 years later, like you said, I'm miserable because my team is 5-7. And Indiana has the Heisman Trophy winner. They got Curt Cignetti over from James Madison University, and they brought him over, and they gave him a $90 million contract because he's lost 2 total games in his tenure there these last 2 years. He's produced a Heisman Trophy winner. He's taken advantage of name, image, and likeness that the Supreme Court ruled on years ago that has now been instituted in college football, where you can actually pay the players. And Mark Cuban, a famous graduate of Indiana University, has donated millions into this program to get them to where they are today, which is undefeated. They won the Rose Bowl. They demolished Oregon. They've demolished Alabama. They've beaten so many teams in their way. They look really, indestructible. And now here is the University of Miami, home. Same type of thing. Mario Cristobal, a former Rutgers assistant, was Greg Schiano's right-hand man. I'm losing my mind here, Kerry, because these are all Rutgers tie-ins, and my team stinks at 5-7. But University of Miami, Mario Cristobal, a couple years ago, fans really upset at some of his decision-making. A Georgia Tech game where he should have taken a knee and ran the ball, and they fumbled. They ended up losing. They missed the playoffs last year. Now here they are, 10-2. Will they make the playoffs? The controversy against Notre Dame. Should they get in versus Notre Dame? In a head-to-head matchup scenario, they do get in. They go on the road, they beat Texas A&M, they win these bowl games, they beat Ohio State. Like they've just looked so good, and it's. I'm telling you, down here in Miami, the Dolphins are number 1, but 1A, and I would argue sometimes it jumps them, is the Miami Hurricanes. The love for the University of Miami. You got people that didn't even go to the school that are really, really excited to see them play for a national championship game. But let me tell you something. They're home. They did lose one game this year against Louisville, a team that they probably should have beaten at home. This is going to be a lot of Indiana fans are going to be here because, like you said, Mendoza is from down here, South Miami kid. It's just the makings of a feel-good story, and it's a holiday weekend coming up soon, so the game will be Monday night. It's going to be fun to watch. I wish I could go, Carrie, but tickets starting at $3,500 for the worst seat in the building. I think I'm going to stay home.
Imagine that. But Miami will be rocking it. Tons of tie-ins there. Fernando going home to play in front of his home crowd, of course. Most will be rooting for the Canes. We'll be watching with great interest. Thanks for joining, Mike. Great conversation.
Yeah. Carrie, thank you as always, buddy.
Sinners, The Secret Agent, and K-pop Demon Hunters each won 2 Golden Globes.
And other winners included Michelle Williams, Ricky Gervais, Stellan Skarsgård, and Rose Byrne. And also Amy Poehler won the inaugural Best Podcast Award for Good Hang.
Up ahead, it's football playoff time. 6 NFL games and the college semifinals all concluding this weekend.
That's right, and we're going to have Mike Leon on to talk about it just after this break. Stay with us.
Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. This year's Entertainment Award season has kicked off with the 83rd Golden Globe Awards.
Here's a look at last evening's highlights.
Adolescence dominated the TV side of the 83rd Golden Globes. The psychological drama won a trio of acting honors and Best Limited Series, Anthology, or Made-for-TV Movie.
Removing hate is our generation's responsibility. It requires thought from the top down. The possibility seems remote right now, but hope is a beautiful thing.
I've been very blessed in my life. I was raised in a family that put a high priority on art and on curiosity and on service.
Noah Wiley won for The Pit, which also took Best TV Drama. Seth Rogen accepted an acting award and Best TV Comedy for The Studio, and Jean Smart won her 3rd Golden Globe for Hacks.
I'm one of the luckiest people in this, not this room, this entire business, and it does not go unappreciated.
Also grateful, Pluribus star Ray Seahorn, Best Female Actor in a TV Drama.
I'm still so grateful that I get to do this for a living, and this is incredible icing on that cake. Thanks.
And Timothy Chalamet, Best Male Actor in a Movie, Musical, or Comedy for Marty Supreme.
Always be grateful for what you have. It's allowed me to leave this ceremony in the past empty-handed, my head held high, grateful just to be here. But I'd be lying if I didn't say those moments didn't make this moment that much sweeter. For my parents, for my partner, I love you. Thank you so much.
One battle after another.
The big film winner was One Battle After Another, with 4 awards, 3 for writer-director Paul Thomas Anderson.
You guys are being so generous with this affection for me and this film, and I'll take it.
Hamnet. And motion picture drama went to Chloe Zhao's Hamnet, whose lead, Jessie Buckley, was also honored.
The most important thing of being an artist is learning to be vulnerable enough to allow ourselves to be seen.
Sinners, The Secret Agent, and K-pop Demon Hunters each won 2 Golden Globes.
And other winners included Michelle Williams, Ricky Gervais, Stellan Skarsgård, and Rose Byrne. Amy Poehler won the inaugural Best Podcast Award for Good Hang. And I think that shows kind of the difference between the Golden Globes and some of the other award shows like the Oscars, because they have a podcast category, they have a comedy category, and I think they generally try to make it a little bit lighter. Some of the speeches tend to be a little freer and looser than the formality of some of those other shows. But congrats to all the winners for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I know the Trump administration, with many different emphases, also has a focus on reviving culture within the U.S. and look to see, how that potentially might impact these awards going forward as well. But it sure is a place of opportunity and creativity, and you see it right there today. Next, Ilya Malinin is headlining the U.S. Olympic figure skating team, which was announced yesterday.
The team includes Andrew Torgashev and Maxim Noemov, and they all finished second and third, respectively, at the U.S. Figure Skating Championships.
Noemov competed with a heavy heart following the death of his parents. They died after a U.S. Army helicopter crashed into their plane over Washington, D.C., just about a year ago.
Yeah, that was a truly tragic moment, and he was affected. He's a favorite for the gold at the Winter Games next month, having won every single competition that he has entered since the 2023 Grand Prix final.
Husband and wife duo Madison Chalk and Evan Bates were also among the 3 ice dance teams that earned a ticket to Milano Cortina. They captured a record 7th National Ice Dance crown on Saturday. Look at them go.
There they go. Chalk and Bates, they helped the Americans to win a team gold at the 2022 Beijing Olympics, but they just missed the podium in the ice dance, and they had to settle for 4th.
Shen Performing Arts delighted audiences at the Tobin Center for the Performing Arts in San Antonio, Texas over the weekend with a dazzling display of traditional Chinese dance, music, and storytelling.
And NTD is a media sponsor of Shen Yun. Let's take a look at some of the audience members' reactions on Saturday and what they thought about the performance.
On January 10th, Shen Performing Arts captivated audiences at the Tobin Center for the Performing Arts in San Antonio, Texas. Theatergoers were mesmerized by a glimpse into the rich traditions of ancient Chinese culture.
I have never seen such wonderful stage acting in the dance. I feel like I've seen Swan Lake, I've seen The Nutcracker, right? I've seen other famous shows before. I can't even compare. It's just absolutely sublime.
They really need to come. They'll enjoy. There's something for everybody. And I think this is a great opportunity for people to come and have fun with their family, their loved ones. I had a really good time, so come on down.
Shen travels around the world with a live orchestra that combines both traditional Chinese and Western instruments.
I really liked, again, the blend of sort of Western traditional orchestra with some of traditional Chinese instruments. I thought that was really special. When I saw that in the program, when I was sitting down, it made me really excited.
Shen's mission is to revive 5,000 years of traditional Chinese culture and values, which have been under attack since the Chinese Communist Party took power in 1949. The company also cannot perform in China because it shines a light on the regime's human rights abuses and brutal persecution of faith.
I think that any time any one of us has the opportunity to spread that message, and you can do it at a stage, and this globally, I think that's a great thing that they're choosing to use their talents to be able to tell people what they've gone through and what their experiences are. I hope to see them again next year, and I hope that they continue dancing for people. It's people like me who don't have talent that can come in and watch. It's really enlightening, and you walk out of here with a different sense for what others are going through. So, and it's done so beautifully. So, thank you.
Shen will be performing at the Eisman Center in Dallas, Texas from January 17th through the 25th. NTD News, San Antonio, Texas.
And of course, Shen Yun's world tour has just begun, so check your listings to see whether it's performing near you. Upcoming cities, New York City, there's performances in Dallas, we've got something happening in Newark, Houston, all over. So I recommend checking it out.
You know what I love about these reactions is, those were some real Texas people.
Yeah.
In San Antonio, but I mean, when you see the interviews from Asia or Europe, South America, you see the world through the eyes of the reactions to a common experience. It really is so fun to watch. But we do have to wrap up the show now, but if you have any feedback or maybe there's a story you'd like to see us cover, we would love your feedback. So send us an email at goodmorning@ntd.com.
We'd love to hear from you. And for round-the-clock original news coverage, you can watch us live at ntd.com/live or just download our app. I'm Stephanie Cox.
I'm Carrie Dunst. Have a great day.